Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome you as you're coming into the Stafford Hamlet community meeting. You are attending as a guest this evening, and I just want to help familiarize you if you are not aware. When you access Zoom, if you'd like to make a comment during public comment, we want to encourage you to use the raise your hand feature. You can also use chat if that's more comfortable for you, but you'll find the raise your hand feature usually in the lower portion of your screen. If you're on some Apple devices, you may see the raise your hand feature in the upper portion of your screen, but that's how we know that you'd like to say something during this evening's meeting, and that's the best way to notify us. Again, I'm Katie Wilson. I'm your community liaison from Clackamas County, and welcome to the Stafford Hamlet community meeting.
Thanks, Katie. I'm Bill Mart. I'm the chair this year of the Stafford Hamlet, and it might be the time for Katie Kreider to put the agenda up. This meeting is essentially three parts, which is the community meeting, the CPO, and then the Hamlet board meeting. You'll see there that we've got a welcome and introductions. So we've got a number of folks from the county here tonight, staff that are going to go through two different projects that are in various stages of development that they'll explain to us. And we were going to have Commissioner Mark Shull, who is the most recent addition to the county commissioners, but some of you may have read in news media, he's had some pushback with some of the things he said recently. This wasn't known to us, nor I think very many people, until the last day or two, and we still were keeping him on the agenda, and we're going to allow some questions, if he were willing, at the end of our meeting. However, he has chosen to not come tonight, possibly a meeting in the future. So if there are folks out there that was their only reason for attending this meeting, or their primary, you can certainly address questions to him through the Clackamas County website. Both Katie Wilson and his primary support person, Carolyn Hill, at the county can take up those questions, and Katie Wilson can give you more specifics as we get further into the meeting. So we're going to start the community meeting now, and there's a couple of, I guess, basic topics that we need to cover, and one of those is an election which we've had ongoing since our last board meeting on December 8th. We're electing Hamlet board members, we're electing CPO board members, and we are also voting on a community vision plan. All those will be addressed with some brevity after the county planning department does the presentation, which is next up. As a reminder, every household member over 18 can vote in our elections. There's a mechanism for verifying, and you can go online at staffordhamlet.com/vote. So I think next, Karen, it looks like if what we've got written down, Karen and Brett are going to talk a bit about the transit development that's taking place, specifically the one that's going to go down Borland and from the Clackamas Community College. So with no further ado, if whether it's Brett or Karen that are going to pick up the ball and run, I turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Great. Well, thank you very much. My name is Karen Burig. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager. And with me here tonight is Brett Setterfield, who has been lead on this project on the Transit Development Plan, as well as Christina Babcock. She's also on the agenda. We kind of do a three-part, or we team up on this presentation. I recognize that the agenda is very full, so we'll try to kind of move through it, not too fast, but not dally too much either. So I do have a presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Let's see, what am I doing here? All right. So again, we're here to talk about the Transit Development Plan. This is a project that actually has been underway at the county for about a year now. We really started to kick it off in January or February of last year. And we are at the stages where we have our draft Transit Development Plan, and we'll be taking this forward to our Public Advisory Committee, as well as the kind of the last meeting with the TAC in a couple of weeks. So the Transit Development Plan is unique for Clackamas County. This is the first time we have done one. And one of the driving factors for putting together a Transit Development Plan actually was the emergence of new funding for transit investments under House Bill 2017. It created a new funding source to be able to pay for transit investments throughout the state. And these transit investments could be within transit districts, but they're also for transit investments outside of existing service providers. In order to make those investments, there needed to be a plan that said that there was a need there. So this is about creating a plan to help us guide those transit investments. For our transit development plan, we really looked at two unique areas. One was the recommendations for the area within the TriMet service area. But then the other kind of set of recommendations had to do with connections between existing service providers in the unincorporated area. So there are really two focuses. Let's see if I can do this. I think, as I mentioned, we've been underway for about a year, and we're at that stage of the project where we're reviewing the draft transit development plan. So we have information on the website. We have a website available that has been talking about the transit development plan. On this website, you can find information and all the materials that have been developed to date. And there's information about our project advisory committee as well. So one of the things I really wanted to focus on is kind of a funky looking map if you don't know what you're looking at. But there are 7 transit providers in Clackamas County. We're very unique in Clackamas County. And so the bright gold area is the TriMet service district. That's obviously kind of the largest area that's covered. But next, what you can see in the teal, that is the South Clackamas Transportation District. That's the transportation district that serves the Molalla area. There's also Wilsonville, South Metro Area Regional Transit, SMART. Canby has a transit service. The city of Sandy provides transit service. There's a transit, Clackamas Community College provides a service from its campus, the Harmony campus, down to the Clackamas Community College campus. They connect with the end of the Green Line. And then the last service is a service that's facilitated through Clackamas County, and it's the Mount Hood Express and the Villages Shuttle. And so that provides service between Sandy and all the way up to Timberline. So we have a lot of different providers that are working in this area. But the other thing I want to call out about this map is all of the white areas. So all of the white areas are areas outside existing transit providers, but those are areas that we don't have really good plans for where transit should be provided. There we go. I just pretty much gave you all of that information about our different providers. And we do have the different 46 fixed routes. There's different types of infrastructure to support the routes and both buses, light rail, and those type of things. So we have park and ride facilities. There's other types of transportation services, paratransit, nonprofit demand response systems, things like Ride Connection or TriMet Lyft. And then there's other programs that really help complement that fixed ride service. So I always think these as you know, the whole suite of transportation services to more fixed route transit, and then onto light rail. So there's all different types of ways to get around. So a key purpose of this project was to identify areas that don't currently have service, that really where the greatest need is to provide those connections. And so as we looked at kind of this broad picture, there were new regional connections, and you can kind of see we highlighted, and I'm really going to focus my presentation on the area that is most applicable to the Stafford area. So these were a set of connections throughout the county, but really there was this need for a connection between Tualatin, Westland, Oregon City, and I-205. There's new local service that was identified, and then additional transit service. So let's say there's existing transit service already there, but there are some places where existing additional service is needed. So there's the categories that are kind of identified within the plan. So as we look at a map, this is pretty difficult to see at this level, and I'll show one that's kind of zoomed in. I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like across the county, but really more zoomed into kind of the urban area and areas that cover the Stafford area. So the darker and the thicker the line, the more runs per day was identified as a need. So you can kind of see the dark, you know, the dark red line here, and with the D that's along I-205, that was identified as a corridor that could support into the future up to between 33 and 64 runs a day. So as we looked into the future, it was seen as there's a place there that definitely had a need. And you can kind of see that throughout the rest of the county as well. There were different types of corridors, better connections between Happy Valley and Sandy, up the 172nd corridor, additional service needed along Highway 43. And so the circles on this map kind of shows more like local job connector type service that might be needed, really more localized. So I want to talk a little bit about the future service opportunities. So as a part of this project, the first thing we kind of identified was, okay, are there needs out there? And then what type of service might be looked at in those areas? So again, I'm just going to focus here on the service between Oregon City and Tualatin that was discussed. So one of the things that we did do during this process was there was a survey to get input. Yeah, I believe we actually had 2 different surveys that were out related to this project. But in the last survey, we really asked people, okay, what type of service might be appropriate in this area? So there were a couple of alternatives that were looked at. There was looked at kind of more of an express service between Oregon City and Tualatin, and what this might look like might be 12 trips per day, really providing that service that would just go from Oregon City to Tualatin and back up to the Bridgeport area is where that is. The other type of service that was looked at was more of a kind of a local service that would be along Willamette Falls Boulevard, go up Borland, and then kind of using not the interstate, but more the local streets. So really that was kind of the question that we had for folks on the survey. What service might you be more likely to use? And the survey results, and the survey says, no, this is kind of what we heard from folks. So the express service is the blue sort of the blue lines, and then the green is more the local service. So as you can see here, for the folks who did respond to the survey, there was more likelihood of support for more the express service. For those especially who actually thought they might use that service. And then just kind of on the other end, there were folks that did answer, and people were less likely or very unlikely perhaps to use the service that was more along Borland Road. So when they were looking at those two options specifically, that's kind of the feedback that they provided to us. So throughout this process, we took all of the different input that we received, and we came up with a variety of different recommendations. The recommendations were included into 3 different categories: short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And as a part of this, again, we just kind of highlighted the recommendation in the short-term category related to service along between connecting Oregon City and up to the I-5 interchange. So looking at how that could be really done with respect to connecting to ride connection service, and how would that would work. So that rose to the top. I think just in the general area, I think it's important to note that the other sort of short-term recommendations were increasing service along Highway 43, as well as some new service along Rosemont. And then the other area kind of that's generally located to, close by is kind of the East Tualatin area, and how can that be better served. So this gives you just kind of a quick map of what those recommendations look like and where sort of the short-term recommendations fall. In the medium term, and you kind of will just see this throughout, actually short-term, medium-term, and long-term, is basically phasing additional service throughout across time, and that into the future we might need to start with something small, but then across time really evaluate and consider what additional type of service might be needed. Kind of do we increase the service span or frequency? And so similar again, that type of map. In other areas, it may be that service only is discussed in the medium term and is not on the short-term map. Actually, kind of in this area, it's a little bit unique because the recommendations sort of span both short, medium, and long-term recommendations. So, so for the long-term recommendations, again, you know, that it's kind of carried through all 3 recommendations. So continue to evaluate what type of service is appropriate and whether additional service would be needed. And by this time, that map is fairly familiar. So finally, I guess I just also wanted to highlight that, you know, in addition to just providing additional service, what are those types of actions and kind of complementary supporting infrastructure is needed. So first of all, continuing to coordinate amongst the providers, right? This implementing this type of service is really also working in close coordination with the other providers. In conjunction with just providing service, we need to be thinking about the transit centers. How do people get from one bus to another? What kind of bus stops and shelters should be there? In addition, we should be thinking about the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure that might be connecting or accessing. Every transit rider is seen to be as a kind of a pedestrian to begin with. How do you make sure the appropriate infrastructure is there? In certain areas, there's probably there's a land use that we should be thinking about that would really support transit. And then finally, information and technology. What are those things that we need to do to really support ridership related to information and technology? Those were kind of the whole suite of different supporting strategies to the actual service. So the next steps for this project is reviewing the transit development plan, the draft transit development plan that kind of pulls together all of the different memos that were brought across time, as well as kind of those key recommendations related to service. As I mentioned, there's a final technical advisory committee, as well as a project advisory committee that'll be meeting later this month. And then finally, we'll be talking about the plan with the Planning Commission and ultimately taking it to the Board of County Commissioners for adoption. So with that, before we kind of jump into questions, we thought we would pass it over to Christina because our different projects are somewhat related.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am Christina Babcock. I am the transit coordinator here at Clackamas County. So Karen briefly mentioned in her project House Bill 2017 STIF funding. So Karen, if you want to flip slides for me. So this transportation bill is a transit tax that's paid for through state payroll tax equal to 0.1%. This transit tax is the sole revenue source for these STIF dollars, not just in Clackamas County, but in the entire state of Oregon. So funding activities are pretty specific. Some of the high level ones are that STIF dollars are to go towards service enhancements or improvements, maintenance of existing transit programs, and then planning efforts to overall improve public transit. Priorities, again, improving public transit, but specifically improving public transit for low-income households or students, purchasing low or no emissions buses, improving connections between communities, whether within service districts or outside of current service districts, and then reducing fragmentation between transit providers. And then one of the big keys, which Karen touched on a little bit, is that any project that is funded with STIF dollars must be identified in a local planning process. There are lots of local plans out there, but this transit development plan is particularly important for Clackamas County because it's our own transit plan for the county that we can rely on then to pull projects from and fund through STIF dollars. So I'm going to touch a little bit on some activities that we did in FY 19-21 with the STIF dollars, and specifically these 4 last mile shuttle projects. So when STIF dollars first came into Clackamas County, we identified 4 different locations within Clackamas County that we wanted to explore last mile shuttles. So we have Oregon City, the Clackamas Industrial last mile shuttle, the Milwaukee Industrial, and then this shuttle between Tualatin, Westland, and Oregon City, which is more like a commuter service. So tonight, we're going to focus specifically on what we've done with this Tualatin, Westland, and Oregon City commuter shuttle. So this funding was for basically a feasibility study. What does it look like? How does it run? Where would it go? And so we have kind of an ongoing needs assessment that's been done in conjunction with the Transit Development Plan, done a Title VI report, completed public engagement through some online surveys, stakeholder interviews, tabling events were planned. COVID kind of changed those plans, so we've had to kind of rework some of that stuff, had extra tabling events via Zoom meetings. Again, I said online surveys. We've had a couple different rounds of online surveys, and then the final report is targeted for probably the middle of March to look at what all the alternatives are, what's the feasibility of it, what are the different options, and again, tying back into those options that Karen kind of laid out in some of the TDP plans. So funding, this feasibility effort is being funded under a specific part of House Bill 2017 called regional coordination dollars that are allocated to Clackamas County. So these regional coordination dollars come via TriMet essentially. And so these regional coordination dollars are funds that are allocated to us via TriMet. There's a pot of money, and it's $3 million at this point in time, that is provided to different service providers in the Portland metro area to look at last mile shuttles with within the TriMet service district, if you will. So this Tualatin, Westland, Oregon City touches into what already exists as TriMet service district, right? And these regional coordination dollars are aimed to say, hey, Clackamas County, or hey, Washington County, or any of the other service providers, we want you to look at what is feasible for shuttle service, because TriMet at this point in time isn't providing that service. So Clackamas County capitalized on that, put in a plan, and got awarded actually kind of a significant amount of funds to look at these different shuttles. The issue specifically with the Tualatin West Twin Oregon City one is it was funded only for feasibility, not for implementation. So my last bullet point there is no long-term funding for implementation, right? So it's great, we're going to do this feasibility study. Where does implementation funding come from? So that leads me to the STIF discretionary pot of money. So STIF discretionary applications is another pot of money within House Bill 2017 that allows service providers to put together applications that says, hey, we have this project, we can't fund it, or not can't, but we are looking for additional funds for this project for these reasons, outside of what we're already allocated, outside of our regular formula funds or outside of the regional coordination dollars. So Clackamas County went ahead and partnered with Washington County and SMART and Ride Connection to put in a discretionary application for FY 22-23 that would look at implementing commuter service along 205 provided by SMART and connecting to the already existing Tualatin shuttle that would be expanded to provide service along Borland Road. Essentially, services would meet at Stafford Road. And so it's a huge project, lots and lots of support from a variety of different places. And so right now it's been submitted and it's being reviewed, and we're hoping to find out here in the next couple of months whether or not that STIF discretionary application was approved. If it's approved, that's really great news. We will move forward with using what has been developed in the transit development plan, as well as our own internal feasibility studies, as well as public feedback to start, that implementation process, which is not immediate. Obviously, it's long. We have more public engagement we need to do, more planning, more outreach, all that type of stuff. So right now, we're just kind of waiting to see where that goes, and in a couple months we may have really good news. And if not, Clackamas County will continue to try to seek additional funding, whether that be through increased regional coordination dollars or through an additional STIF discretionary application to try to get this commuter service up and running along 205, as it's been identified in multiple plans as being badly needed. So that's what I had for tonight. Obviously, this is your general, time to ask any of us, whether it be Brett or Karen or myself, questions. My email's there, Brett's email is there. And you can always feel free to get in touch with us after the fact as well.
So we are open for questions. I'm not quite sure how you guys want to sort of facilitate this.
Well, typically, when there's a question from the attendees, they'll use the little hand raise feature, and then Katie will light them up, and we'll go from there. So Katie Wilson, are you seeing any questions coming forth?
It looks like there's one in chat that I can answer really quick that talks about how accurate the timetables will be along 205. One of the benefits of this project that we're pursuing with SMART is SMART is looking at running bus on shoulder both on I-5 and 205. So they're pretty far into the process with ODOT to get that approved. And if that's the case, this commuter service along 205 would actually run on the shoulder. So ideally, the timetables would actually be pretty accurate because we should be able to avoid traffic. Significant accidents, they're going to happen, and there's nothing that we are going to be able to do about those, although depending on where we're at and where the accident is at, obviously there can always be detours taken. But I would say there's a pretty good likelihood that the timetables will be relatively accurate if we can proceed forward with bus on shoulder.
Bill, I had a question. I'm sure Katie's around to answer my raised hand. This is John Keith. So I have a couple questions. One is, we've had several presentations from the tolling folks, and they talk about the main goal of tolling is to get people out of their cars and into public transportation. And you're proposing a I-205 alternative. And I just wanted to find out, to what degree have you been engaged with the tolling folks in their planning, and how do you incorporate what may happen in the next couple of years with this proposal?
So I'll jump in
So-
with that. Oh, so I guess I was just going to say that as a part of the work that I do with the county, one of the things that I do is I'll sit on a multimodal committee for the I-205 conversations around tolling, as well as the tolling and the Abernathy Bridge. So we're involved with respect to that and being able to understand what kind of needs there might be. But the transit development plan really has been developed outside of that framework related to tolling. But it does provide us with some guidance on kind of the broader picture related to transit and transit need in the area. So Christina, did you have something else?
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, that discussion was a large part of the stiff discretionary application that we put in. My stance on that was, if we're going to proceed forward with tolling on I-205, then there needs to be a viable transit option. Therefore, you should fund our project so we can, get this pilot up and running and show that it can be successful. And then ODOT can, say, yay, we have a viable transit option, and we're going to provide long-term funding. So that was a pretty significant part of that stiff discretionary application.
Okay, I should have started with this question first. So I'm still kind of mystified as to how this was identified as a priority. I didn't receive a survey, so I didn't get a chance to weigh in on this. So can you kind of demystify how this became a priority and who was involved with the survey?
Sure. So first of all, we did some initial background work with regards to identifying needs. We looked at kind of the travel patterns that people have for where they live and where they work. So that was kind of the foundation of kind of the input of trying to identify where there might be needs to begin with. Was we looked at live work, as well as we looked at future areas where there would be growth. And let's see, and I'm going to also look at Brett if he can think of other things that I might have missed. But that really set the foundation. And we talked with our project advisory committee about these memos that helped us identify where the needs were to begin with. And we worked with our other transit providers. So that was kind of the foundation. And then we did work with our public engagement team to develop a survey. And so the survey was pushed out in a variety of different ways. I believe that it was advertised, and I think Ellen's on this group as well. But we did advertising through social media, pushing it out through our partners and our different kind of technical team partners. And then we also reached out to the different CPOs at the time that we were doing the survey to also get some additional feedback. So I do know that it definitely was an interesting time, right? How do we reach out to different groups in this time of COVID? And so we worked, we used a variety of different venues to do that. So the one thing I wasn't sure about was, did we get the information about surveys in some newsletters? And I'm kind of looking both at Brett and Ellen.
I am not sure, but I think Ellen might know.
Yes, I'm pretty sure we had it in our monthly email newsletter that goes to about 12,000 people. And also we put it out on social media throughout the county.
Okay, thank you. So I have one more question, since you brought up that, one of the things we learned on the Clackamas County Coordination Council is that, like Wilsonville, for example, has 90% of the people commuting out and 90% of the workers commuting in. So why wasn't that a priority as opposed to the I-205 to Tualatin? It just seems like when we have a high in and out like Wilsonville, that would be a higher priority than connecting Tualatin to Oregon City.
So with that, I guess one of the things that I would note is the fact that Wilsonville does see that as a high priority. Wilsonville, and I think Christina touched on this briefly, has been involved in these conversations about how do we make better connections in general in this sort of Oregon City to I-5. I think one of the things that you might have noted is that when we talked about it on our plan, it was actually Oregon City to I-5. So which then becomes, you know, service down to Wilsonville and service up to Tualatin. How is it that we serve that entire area? So one of the things that is in Wilsonville's plans is to improve the service between Wilsonville and the Clackamas Town Center, right? So that's one type of service, but then the other type of service really is about the Oregon City area up to Tualatin. I think one of the things that was interesting to me as a part of this study is the fact that the amount of people who do have jobs in Washington County that live in Clackamas County. And really, how is it that we can improve our connections to places like Tigard or, you know, even Hillsborough? And really the avenue to that is making that first connection there to Bridgeport and into Tualatin. And then that kind of opens up the transit in the TriMet area.
Thank you. I'm taking way too much time, but thank you.
Okay, sure. It looks like Richard, do you have a question?
I do, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things John asked were pertinent to some of my questions, but when we talk about the local one running on Borland Road, what is anticipated ridership for the total of the days of each day? And if we don't have a secure source of funding at some point in the future, what would the break-even toll be per person to keep this running? Because once you initiate something, you don't want to, I don't think we want to find ourselves in the situation. What TriMet has done over the years is, well, we don't have enough riders. We're going to drop this run. We're going to drop that run. So that's my first question.
So last mile shuttles typically range, I mean, it depends on the last mile shuttle, but we'll say range from anywhere from 2 to 5 riders per an hour. And that's across the board, right? So you have like the Grove Link out in Forest Grove, you have the King City shuttle in King City, you have the Tualatin shuttle that Ride Connection currently operates, which I think is closer to about 4 people an hour. And so, you know, we want to make sure that the ridership on that Borland Road service is right about average with the rest of the shuttles, right? We don't want to have 1 rider an hour. And if we had 10 or 11 riders an hour, we would be really, really happy. Break even point, all that type of stuff is what needs to be studied when we go through the implementation plan, right? Really getting out there post-COVID and doing the full public outreach. Who's going to ride this? How much are they going to ride this? How do we sync schedules up to make sure that we aren't offering too much service, but we're offering enough service? And then as soon as we get the go-ahead to do this pilot project, if you will, the very first item on the list is how do we secure long-term funding so we don't have to take service away as you're describing, right? And so I don't know if there's a specific break-even point, Richard. It's hard for me to say that because some of it's about helping people that need to get to where they need to go, right? And so like the Village Shuttle service that we currently operate doesn't have astronomically high ridership, but that service is critically important for the people that use it. And that's the idea along Borland Road. You have a lot of social services out there along Borland Road that people don't currently have access to via transit. The food pantry, the church, church out there, the Rolling Hills Church, I believe it is, and some other things. And so if we're providing 2 or 3 rides an hour and we're allowing people to access those critical life services, then that's something that we're going to definitely go after long-term funding for. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all yes, but also no. You know how that is. It's like, well, funding is a very interesting topic. So one of the other questions would be transit center. So on the shuttle between Tualatin on 205 to Oregon City, is there an anticipated stop, i.e., for lack of a better term, a park and ride someplace where that can gain additional, or is it in fact a true shuttle? I'm running from A, I go to B, I turn around, I go back to A.
Lots of options. One of the most I'm trying to think of the word. I can't think of the word. But one of the options that got the most buy-off was starting in Wilsonville, stopping at Stafford Road. There's a large church as you get off 205 on the right there on Stafford Road. There's a large church. We often work at church. We often work with churches for park and rides, develop a nice park and ride right there, right? Pull a lot of the traffic in. They stop. They head down to West Lynn. They make a stop in West Lynn, make a stop in Oregon City, and ultimately end in Clackamas Town Center. So it's yes and no. A few stops, but not stopping every 5 minutes.
Well, we in the Hamlet are pretty well versed on conditional uses. And I think one of the issues would be that all of these churches that are in the RRFF5 areas, their conditional uses were not to have additional trips and not to have park and rides. They are for, as I'm preaching to the choir, you guys are in the transportation part, you know, you understand the what ifs and the scenarios, but you know, that's a big question of all these additional trips at the park and rides in comparison, not that it's a benefit or a deterrent, but the fact that the conditional uses were never approved for something like that out here in the RRFF5 areas.
Noted. No, I mean, noted. It's, you know, it's one of those obstacles. I mean, it's one of those obstacles we have to figure out. And, you know, with the lack of funding right now, it's a basic feasibility study. Could we potentially make it work? And the answer is yes, we could potentially make it work. What implementation looks like, there, you know, there's barriers, right? There always is. And so where do we stop? How do we stop? How do we get more people onto the service is always something we have to explore.
So we're going to need to move on, but Len has a question. If you can make it a good, straightforward question, Len, you're on, bud.
Okay, I can't find the raise my hand thing on here, so that's why I raise a finger.
You're doing fine.
This brings up the kind of a question about, is this idea one idea fits all type thing? It seems to me that if you have people that want to go from the Bridgeport area to Oregon City, Clackamas Town Center, that's a straight through express. Then you should have a separate way of putting people from the local area to those connection points. As far as local ridership getting to 12 to Bridgeport, or local ridership from West Lynn to Oregon City, or wherever the connecting points would be. Like Richard brought up, the conditional use authorization for church parking lots are not compatible right now. The conditions can be changed as far as rules, I guess, but it seems to me like if you're trying to do one ride fits all, it doesn't seem to work as well as break it into smaller pieces. I don't know if that would be even feasible.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. It's definitely something that we have to explore, and definitely something that is on the table and was part of our application.
Thanks, Lynn. And thanks, Christina and Karen and Brett, Ellen, for putting all this together and sharing it with us. I hope the attendees have a better understanding not only of what some of the goals are, but also the complexity of what you folks are doing. I think we probably need to pass the baton on to Jonathan Heingartner regarding the project that is running up and down Stafford, or in the, I guess it's in the survey stage, bike lanes and some alterations. So Jonathan, you want to take it and run with it a bit?
Sure. Let me do a screen share here. I've got a short presentation. Well, thank you for having me this evening. Appreciate the opportunity to share about this project. Ellen is on this meeting as well, and she's our public outreach lead. And so she's very helpful in terms of keeping everything posted online and connecting up with the CPO and the Hamlet on this. So we're gonna try to be pretty intentional about keeping you guys posted on this project as we move forward. As Bill mentioned, we're just getting going in the design phase of this project. So we don't have all the details of it yet, but we will have more detail that we can share with you in the coming months. So look forward to that. So this project, the Stafford Road improvements from Petula way to Rosemont Road, is really from the Tualatin River Bridge up to the Rosemont Roundabout. And the main purposes of the project are to add bike lanes on both sides of the road along that entire stretch of Stafford, and then to do some intersection improvements at Childs Road intersection and at Johnson Road intersection. So the county just started the design this last December with the help of a consultant that we have a design contract with. So some of you may have received some postcards in the mail this week. We were notifying the residents adjacent to that stretch of Stafford Road that there will be consultants and surveyors out there doing some investigative work. So expect to see some people in orange vests and stuff out on Stafford Road. They'll be doing survey and other things like that. So go through this slide here. The timeline for this project, the design, like I mentioned, started just a couple months ago, December of last year, and it's going to last a couple years, all the way into the summer of 2022. The right-of-way phase, which will come kind of in between the 30 and 60% designs, will be from the winter of 2021 all the way until April of 2023. And the reason why the right-of-way doesn't start until partway into the design is because we have to figure out what we're going to build before we know what the impacts might be to the properties around Stafford Road. So a brief overview of the right-of-way process for those that are interested. Right-of-way staff from the county and consultant staff will get in touch with property owners that might be impacted by the project. They'll hire independent appraisers to figure out what the value of those impacts are and those property acquisitions. And then there'll be a period of negotiations and discussion about those things with the property owners. And of course, there'll be fair payment for any of those impacts. Like I mentioned, that right-of-way will begin between 30 and 60 or 60 and 90% design, somewhere in there, once we have a good idea of what the footprint of the project will be. And then construction, where they actually do all the construction and the paving and all that, that will be 2023 all the way into 2024. The funding for this project comes from two sources. The newly formed Community Road Fund, which comes from the vehicle registration fee. That's about $6.5 million. And then transportation system development chargers. Those come from people doing developments that pay a fee to the county. And that's about $3.6 million. So total, it's just over 10 million. Looking at the Stafford and Childs intersection, there's a small aerial you can see. Right now, that intersection is just stop controlled on Childs Road. So you stop on Childs to get on to Stafford, and it's very skewed. So it comes into the intersection at a pretty extreme angle. So part of our design effort is going to be looking at different alternatives, which could include a traffic signal or a roundabout. And the factors that we'll look at to determine if we do a traffic signal or roundabout are cost, safety, and right-of-way impacts to the adjacent properties. In addition, we'll be adding those bike lanes, those paved bike lanes along the entire project limits. And we may widen to just one side of the roadway, or we may widen on both sides, just depending on what the survey shows and how steep the topography is in different areas, and also on environmental impacts. And because of how steep it is out there, there's going to be pretty extensive retaining walls that will be required to stabilize the slopes. And that'll be one of the main factors in determining where we do our widening. Looking at the Johnson and Stafford intersection, again, here's a little blow up aerial. You can see this intersection is very skewed, and it also comes down the hill at a very steep grade. And there's poor sight distance just to the south. along Stafford Road when you're coming up towards Johnson. So what we're gonna work to do at Johnson is reduce or eliminate that intersection skew and add a southbound left turn lane from Johnson or from Stafford onto Johnson. So that will help relieve congestion on Stafford so that people don't back up trying to take a left turn onto Johnson. And it'll hopefully also reduce the amount of rear end accidents. So it should be a safety improvement. The community outreach that we're planning to do, part of that involves meetings like the one we're having tonight. Another way we're doing that is through social media and emailing interested parties. Mail notices to residents and stakeholders like the postcards that we just sent out. We'll probably have a virtual open house that people can go and look at more detailed project information and submit questions. And then property owners along the project that are maybe especially impacted or have a special interest in the project will reach out to individually. So if you'd like, you can join the interested parties email list. Feel free to contact Ellen or myself with questions or concerns, and my contact info is at the next slide here. Just tell your neighbors about it and others so that they kind of know what's going on with this project. And let's see, my contact info is here, cell phone and email. And here's also a link to the project webpage in case you're interested. I'm sure that this information can get posted once the meeting's concluded. Other than that, I just have a couple questions that I thought I'd try to answer that I've already heard that you guys may be interested in. So I'll just go through those really briefly here. Question one related to this project, protecting Pecan Creek on both sides of the Stafford Road. So our consultant engineers are aware of the Pecan Creek that goes underneath Childs Road at the intersection, and also a Pecan Creek tributary that's just north of there that may cross underneath Stafford Road. So we'll be looking and paying close attention to both of those. And with the realignment of Childs Road, we will actually be replacing that Pecan Creek culvert and get it up to the current standards, which may include fish passage protection. And we'll go through all those environmental studies to make sure we replace that culvert correctly. The second question is the possibility of speed reductions on Stafford Road. And I verified with our traffic group that there's no plans to reduce speeds on Stafford Road in this stretch of the roadway at this time. Question number three, anything problematic to the west of Stafford Road, south of Childs Road intersection? The most problematic issue on the west side is how steep of a drop off it is and the fact that there's Pecan Creek on the west side. And the two different options there, because we do want to widen for bike lanes, we could either widen on that west side and put retaining walls, or we could do all of our widening on the east side and then put a new crown in the road. So make the center of the road, kind of adjust that for the widening on the right. So essentially you'd build 2 bike lanes worth of width all on one side and then shift the road over. So that's another possibility. Question number 4 is impacts of driveway at the new Stevens Farmstead Park. So I have been contacted by the consultant engineer who's designing that driveway for the Farmstead Park. And because of their time constraints for submitting plans for permits, they've had to move forward with the design that they have. And they're aware that the county's project at that intersection may impact that driveway. but unfortunately, they have to move forward with their project as it is. And so if we have any impacts to that driveway, we'll just have to kind of fix that as part of our construction. But of course, we'll do everything we can to not have those impacts. Question number 5, with future development by Lake Oswego, what are plans for the Stafford Rosemont roundabout and improvements north of the project? And that is a question for the city of Lake Oswego, because the city of Lake Oswego actually owns the Rosemont roundabout. That's actually outside of the county limits. So I would have to defer that question to the city. What I can say is that the county is going to be coordinating with the city of Lake Oswego in the design phases of this current project. And so that will be something that will probably come up in our traffic study of this corridor. Question number 6, what would be the impact on this project if the county eliminated the vehicle registration fee? And I know there's been I've had that question asked several times. If the vehicle registration fee were to go away, then this project would go away. As I showed on the previous slide, I think there's about $6.5 million coming from the VRF. So this project just wouldn't be possible without that, unfortunately. So that's it for me. I guess if anyone has questions, feel free to ask.
Looks like John Keith has a question.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. So in previous presentations or discussions with county staff, they pretty much eliminated the roundabout, which is unfortunate at Childs Road. But the imagining a stoplight there at Childs, it just seems like a disaster. So because we used to have a stop sign down there where down by the Wonker store is right now. So can you explain how a stoplight would actually help? Because it seems like it'd create a new safety hazard.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I guess I imagine what you're talking about, thinking about a signal creating a safety hazard, might have to do with congestion and cars backing up on Stafford Road and on Childs Road as they're waiting for their green light phase. And so maybe that could cause some rear end accidents or people getting impatient. So yeah, so that's a great question. We're going to do a very extensive traffic study, not just at Childs Road, but all the way from Rosemont past Childs and all the way down past the Tualatin River to the next roundabout, looking at what adding a signal would do to the traffic flow along this whole stretch. Because our point with this project is to improve, or rather reduce congestion and improve safety. So we obviously don't want to do the opposite. Two things, if we did build a signalized intersection, we would add additional turn lanes. So all of the cars would not be backed up on one single lane, if that makes sense. And that's typical of intersections with signals. So that's one thing that would help mitigate that congestion. The other thing would be looking at Childs Road and Stafford Road, especially to the north. There's some pretty tight curves and pretty poor sight distance. And so I could see that as being a safety issue. On Childs Road, we would eliminate that skew to improve sight distance. And we would also look at the possibility of advanced signals, which meaning like a secondary signal ahead of the actual signal, so that before you turn, as you're turning the corner, you can see if it's going to be red or not, if that makes sense. So there's a couple of things we'll look at if we decide to go with a signal that would try to help mitigate those issues you're talking about.
Yeah, that would be great, because even at rush hour now, it backs up to the Rosemont Circle. So you can just imagine how it would back up if we had a stoplight there. So yep. I appreciate that. In terms of bike lanes, was that, I mean, those are nice, but I would rather have a better road than a bike lane. Is there something that driving you to put in bike lanes?
Let's see. One thing is the vehicle registration fee money, which is called the Community Road Fund, is, I guess, allocated or dedicated to congestion relief. So in that sense, it is helping with the bicycle multimodal part of that. Another piece of that is adding bike lanes along this stretch of Stafford connects bike lanes to the south and to the north. And this is the most constrained section of Stafford that doesn't have bike lanes. And so it would be an important connection for bike connectivity. This project that we're talking about today is actually the combination of two projects that were finalists in the Community Road Fund selection process. One of those projects being intersection improvements at Johnson and Childs, and the second project being adding the bike lanes. So it is the combination of two projects. That's not a very good answer. So if you want to reach out to me offline, we can talk more about it. And there's other people that know a lot more about the bike lane stuff than I do.
No, that's fine. It's a tough question. So thank you.
So, Jonathan, thanks for putting this
Hey,
together.
Bill, there's actually a couple more questions, Bill.
Well, here's the deal. we're starting to go over the top here,
Okay.
and we've got an email address for Jonathan and a way to hook up with the engineering folks. So if Jonathan's willing to stick around until the end of the meeting and entertain those questions, fine. If not, I think if they want to shoot them to him via email, then they'll get a direct answer back. I'm quite sure. I just feel like we've got to move along here. So thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Katie, for the heads up.
Yeah, no problem.
So we've got a couple more items here on the community community meeting portion. We've got a vote coming up here that's going to cease and desist in about a week on the 19th, I think, at 5 o'clock. Rich Fiala has kind of given us some of the round perspectives of the community vision plan, which is one of the things on the ballot. Rich, can you do that yet again for us?
Yeah, oh yeah. So I'm going to brief tonight. My name is Rich Fiala. I'm the vice chair of the Hamlet. The community vision plan was required by Clackamas County as our last goal, the last goal that we had to reach to for the county to be a hamlet. In 2015, we created a community vision plan. It was an elegant document. And when we became part of the urban reserves, what we had in our community vision plan for upzoning or down zoning, excuse me, I guess it's upzoning for the EFU land to 5 and 10 acre parcels no longer was possible or applicable. And that's a law, not something of our choosing. So the board last year created a new community vision plan. I believe it's 101 words. Its focus, and you can find that on the website of Stafford Hamlet, its focus is conservation and active agriculture. And it talks to how much our area means to us in the aspect of the green spaces, the river, the pastoral views, and so on. But the real focus coming out of your board was based on working lands, conservation easements for green spaces, and in addition to that, promoting agriculture back in the Hamlet again as a community source for food close into each of the 3 surrounding communities. And so that's up for your vote right now, and please participate, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
And on that secondary or maybe primary note, depending on who you're talking to, we've got 4 candidates for the CPO board. They are Mitch Jones, John McCabe, Randy Yamada, and Len Schauber. I believe, obviously Len is here. You can see him on your screen. And I believe John has joined us as well. If either of you would like to say anything in your in your intense campaign process, feel free. Otherwise, we can also, I think we can show a picture of John. Is that possible, Katie, or is John's image visible?
If he can turn, we can ask him to unmute. John, are you there?
Well, John's running, as is Len, and I think both of these folks, Len's been doing this for quite a few years and most recently solo. So it's going to be great for him to have some support, and we encourage you certainly to vote for all 4 of these candidates. On the Hamlet board side, Katie Kreider and Patty Manula are both existing board members and are running again. The 3 new board members are Tate Morgan and Andy Munson, who I believe are in attendance, and Kelsey Vu, whom I don't think is, although I'm not the guy that's ever really sure about these sorts of things. But Tate or Andy, if you want to say something, feel free, raise your hand, turn your screen on. If not, that's fine. But thanks for being here in attendance, and thanks for your willingness to be involved. Oh, there, look at that. A nice picture, a nice picture of Tate there, and actually Andy, showing Andy's name is actually his best side. So that's we got the best of both of those guys. Thanks so much. So now we're going to move on to the CPO portion of the meeting. Len Schauber, you want to run us through this?
Well, this evening, the CPO is pretty well not doing too much, because I haven't seen anything come through as far as any land use matters. The latest application from the school district, I never even saw that one, so we'll have to see what happened as far as the notification goes on that. The other thing is that Mitch has filed an appeal with Luba over the ruling on the Willamette United Football Club soccer improvement project. So we'll have to see how that goes. And those are really the only things I have to bring up as far as CPO is concerned. Just looking for more participation as far as the chair and other positions are concerned, so we can kind of have a little bit better representation to present each one of these meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, so you can see here that, oh, you know what? I missed something. By golly, am I glad I had Katie put that up there. How could I miss that? I mean, there it is sitting right in front of my own agenda. We're going to back it up just a minute. And I got a few questions for Lynn, but we've had 2 board members that have been just instrumental in our success and supporting us. I think Katie Kreider would like to say something in and around that. And my apologies again for jumping out of order. Katie?
Not at all. So yes, the board wants to thank our 2 outgoing board members, Jana Lombardi and John Keith. And unfortunately, we can't all be gathering together, and giving you both big hugs and warm smiles, thanking you for all of the amazing work and energy and passion that you've given to the Hamlet and the board and the work that you've done over the years. We do want to acknowledge you both with the gift certificate to Bugatti's, as well as Rick Cook has some special bottles of wine that he saved from this year that we'll be getting to you both. Again, we all want to thank them both.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank
both of you. Okay, so now we're going to flip back here to Len and the CPO meeting. So thanks for the update regarding the Willamette United Aruba appeal. There's also I want to say it's the 22nd. John McCabe, I think, probably knows this as well as anybody, but there's another project, I guess, dissertation or shared shared information from the school district to the community about the new middle school that's going up on Dollar Street. And I mean, it's open to everybody, and we've gotten some of us have gotten notification, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the 22nd. Is that, do I have that right? For the West Lane Wilsonville School District? Anybody? I'll tell you what, we can post that maybe on the website if I'm wrong, but and if John's can chime in, he will probably know that as well. And Len, I don't know if you were able to attend the CPO summit in December. In fact, I'm not even sure if they had one. They've got another one. I think the next one I saw anyway is coming up in February. So if there wasn't one in December, then there's really nothing to report. But they've been pretty active with trying to gather some force to change a little bit of the lead times for the conditional use permit process. But any update on that?
No update at this time. I see on the chat thing on the bottom that Tom McCabe had an update on the date for the school.
Oh.
27th, I believe. That's what showed up in my chat thing on the bottom.
The meeting is on the 27th for the middle school.
27th. I was so close. Thank you. Anything else, Lynn?
Nope, not this time.
Okay, thanks so much. All right, we're going to move on to the board meeting. And certainly everyone is welcome to stick with us and run through this. Only what? No, we're not doing too horribly bad. We're only about 10 minutes back at this point. So so call to order. We've got an agenda which is in front of you folks. If you scroll down a little bit. Do we have any comments on the agenda? And if not, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
And a second. Great, thank you. All those in favor, I guess.
Aye.
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 And all those opposed? Great. Sounds like we got everybody on board with that. The minutes were sent out by Kate Roth about a week ago. Always good to read and see what it is we did, because my age, I don't remember stuff as well as I'd like to. And we're going to Are there any additions or changes that need to be made to the minutes that anybody's aware of? And that being the case, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I move we approve the minutes.
And a second?
Okay.
Thank you. Minutes have been motion to approve and seconded. And can we get a show of hands or ayes to approve?
Aye.
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 And any dissent, any nays on that one? Good job. Okay, we're down to Bill Long. Bill Long and the treasurer's report, which is basically the bank statement. How are we doing, Bill?
Probably very little change. The only change is we had a deposit of return of a check that we cut for printing pre-pandemic. And we just didn't feel it was right letting it sit there, so we put it back in our account. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as last month and the month before and the month before.
Great.
Everybody got a copy of it? Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we had mentioned, I believe, at the last meeting, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it was the previous meeting to that, was with the money that we had prepaid for printing and labels and mailing. If there's some of that that's going to help the county, Katie, I mean, I don't know if we talked to Kelly about that or whom, but I mean, that's why we had that money. That's why we, had the money and prepaid that, was to be ready for our what we knew was going to be a vote. So if we've got some of that left, the county certainly, I'm sure, could use that. I'll let
I can check with Kelly. It might just be easier as far as the paperwork and to keep that in your account.
Okay.
And then we will just deduct that from what your needs are for next year.
Okay.
But I'll check with her. It just seems like it might be cumbersome to try to move the
Okay.
money back and forth when we're going to be discussing your budget for next year anyway.
Yeah, we'll just leave that in your court.
Sounds great.
Okay. So that we don't forget to say this. Well, actually, do you have a count on the number of ballots?
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
Bill, we need to accept the treasurer's report.
I'm sorry. Well, Bill, then you need to say it out loud. What do we have left in the bank?
$2,597.86.
Perfect.
I move that we approve the treasurer's report.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich.
We got a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the treasurer's report? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Not so much. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, so I don't know if that's something you have on in your field of vision, Katie, and if not,
Yes.
that's fine, but
Yeah, it looks like this evening, I just checked just now, we have 176 votes from the Hamlet CPO mailing. And then, of course, we did the little mailing to the portion of Stafford that is just the Stafford CPO, and we have 18 votes from that community as well.
great. So we're closing in on 200.
Yep. So I think that that's a greater number than we have traditionally had in your in-person town halls. So I would say that we have been successful in increasing your vote.
Well, thanks.
Well,
Appreciate the update. But that being said, don't think that if you haven't voted yet, that you're off the hook. get out there and give us your take, plus minus whatever, and certainly
Absolutely.
And can I just throw in there that just reminding that anybody over 18 in the household, so if you have a household with 3 adults in it, please have all 3 individuals vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna. Did you have something, Rich?
I do. I just want to remind everybody that when we had our last physical community vision plan vote, I think it was 386 people. And I am disheartened that we are at this level. I mean, I don't have any more votes to get. It's not like I can ask to get some taken or placed, but I wish that, especially with the ease of this style of voting, that we could somehow have had a significant turnout in comparison to where we are now. So I'm for one very disappointed.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Patty has a question.
Sure.
You're muted, Patty.
I agree with Rich. I mean, I was expecting a much better turnout because it's so easy to vote, and you don't even have to be in town. Not that anybody's really traveling right now, but like the fact that we're like working so hard to get 200 is, to me, totally disheartening. I thought for sure we were maybe going to get like 400 or 500. And I mean, I think everybody on the board has done their part. They've all contacted people that they know, reminded people that they know. And we had a discussion about putting signs out, and Bill went with what Dave Adams was recommending. We're putting a few more signs out, but I don't think that's the issue, frankly. If you think of anybody else, personally that you can contact, please do so. Because the point is, I thought we really wanted to show how successful this way to vote was, so that we could say, oh, this look at all the credibility we have for voting online, and surely this is the way we should do it in the future. So anyway,
Well, I appreciate your disappointment. There are a lot of things, a lot of factors to community engagement, and there's a lot of things happening in the world right now that people are having to prioritize in their lives. So, I think it's just a really challenging time. I think that there's a lot of reasons, and sometimes we just don't know why folks don't step in, but I don't want to give up on online voting. I think that we're seeing success with the Hamlet and Malino also having increased voting. So we're hopeful that this tool will be helpful in the future, and hopefully we'll continue to engage more folks using online tools so they feel more comfortable participating. We have had a couple requests for mail-in ballots, so we're expecting a few of those back. And we will do another final push out on social media from the county. So we're hopeful that that'll get us some more votes as well. Rick Cook, yeah.
I just wanted to say, please don't take what I said, anything against what you guys have done at the county.
Oh, no. I don't.
It's disappointing.
Sure. Rick Cook.
Hey, Katie, I saw in chat where you answered, somebody asked about how much longer it's going to be open. If you could just tell them the dates on that, and actually maybe how to hook up and the procedure real quick, just so those that don't know would know.
Sure. So voting closes on the 19th of this month. So we want to encourage, if you haven't voted yet, to please go vote. You should have received a postcard, and I believe the link for the SurveyMonkey ballot is on the Stafford Hamlet website. And if you need a mail-in ballot, you can contact me. We are getting dangerously close to the due date. So if you do need a mail-in ballot, please contact me right away so we can make sure to get that out to you and get it back in time.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I mean, yeah, you know, to I think Katie's point, when you go through what the society has gone through, what the world's gone through with the virus, when you go through a voting, I guess, a contentious voting season period, there's probably a lot of things that, you know, in a different world, this would have been easier for folks, and there would be, you know, maybe more energy. But to all of your points, the ease of this once you get into it is, you know, you don't have to get in the car and go anyplace. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to do any of that. You just, you know, hook up and do it. So yeah, I hope you can help us, and we'll see how it all plays out. We do have a retreat on the 30th for all the board members, all our existing board members, and those that are going to be elected. That should be a 3-hour. I think someplace I saw an all-day event, but I think in reality it's a 3-hour. Typically a 3-hour. It will be facilitated once again by Amy Herman. We've got something here on the agenda, and I think it's left over from last month, but it's the update for the next 2 months, which a lot of that is going to be a function of what we come up with on the retreat. So voting over is done in a week, just like Katie said, and hopefully out of the retreat, like we usually do, we come up with a list of goals that we want to achieve, and a number of things that we have achieved in the past. So I don't know that there's been particular activity, which is, I think, one of the problems with COVID, but the committees have done bits and pieces here and there, not so much as groups, but more individual efforts. And we as we go into our retreat, we're also going to work mightily to try to find how we replace John Keith and Jana Lombardi and all that they have given us over the last years. So anything I'm leaving off that I am missing? I mean, our next meeting is on the 9th, which is the second Tuesday of February. And look and find at least a week ahead what's on the agenda for that meeting. Anything else, board, that I missed?
I do, Bill.
Yeah.
So from me, Jana and John, thank you so much. You guys have participated beyond the call of duty. You have always been there. You have done the work behind the scenes, getting these meetings prepped the last year or two, and Jana before that. And I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate it. And for those that don't know out there that are still on this recording, these guys really make things go, and we will miss you sorely. And thank you for your effort.
Thank
you.
you.
Is Caroline?
Jana and John, I would like to put in my 2 cents worth also, that my thanks for your help, and hope to see you around more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good way maybe to close this up.
Hey, Bill, just real quick. Last meeting, we had some people curious about what was going on with the swimming pool up at Lake Oswego. Jana, in one of her final official duties, she posted a meeting, which is the Recreation and Aquatic Center PAC meeting on January 14th at 6 o'clock. And they're just going to go over who knows what, but that way you can stay on touch. They'll be talking about the process and all that. And for John and Jana, your work really is just now beginning, now that you are freed up.
So,
That is
so
hilarious.
wait, I just want to tell people that Jana said she's not totally going away. She said
Good.
she would still be helping us, and John Keith volunteered to synthesize the whole PSU study and give us some direction forward. So these two haven't gone anywhere yet.
If you need tips, let me know.
That's true. I'm going to be around for a while, so I'll be working behind the scenes just like Rick and Jana.
Glad to hear. Glad to hear.
Oh, look how cute, Katie.
There's still gas left in the tank. We can't leave without having an empty tank, okay? Let's just be clear. Thanks,
That's
Lynn.
cute. Yay!
And Lynn, yeah. Okay, guys.
Miss you.
Now, that,
But we know how to find you.
yeah. All right, yeah, that's a fact. Anything else? Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thanks so much for all your work, and thanks for coming tonight. And Carolyn, it's time to go to bed.
Ciao.
Okay. Thanks, Katie.